they said, hey, do you ever think about selling real estate? And it just kind of like the world's just all the stars aligned. And I moved back to Nanaimo and got my license in 2019 at 21 years old. And I've been with the same company ever since. You have to remember, this office in Nanaimo, city of about 100,000 people, had a 50% market share. Like, wow. It was crushing. And so I was working with the best in the business for the most part. And they were schooling me production wise, but I was carrying around this little thing called an iPad, and they'd be like, hey kid, what's that little TV? And I'm like, this thing is an iPad. And they go, well, what do you do with it? And I would say, run my whole business. I owe my career to Dropbox, DocuSign, and PDF Expert, because I was teaching a 3-part series on how to use all those tools so you never had to print off a piece of paper ever again. Hey, I want to be a realtor to fully licensed at a brokerage. It's all gas, no brake. This probably is a good entry point into maybe just the crazy that is, all things me. I think it depends on how you define what success is. I think that's like a really big thing for me. And when I look at a guy like Tom, his YouTube videos and subscribes and his Instagram reach and all that is impressive, no doubt. And give him his flowers. But the Tom I've gotten to know is a guy who makes time for his family and he's got a good personal life, and he just seems to be a really well-adjusted guy. So I think that's the starting point. Like, what makes Tom successful? It's like, well, what's your definition of success? Because I know a lot of agents who make more than Tom that I wouldn't consider successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I would agree with that sentiment a lot. Actually, you can make a lot of money, but like, what does your emotional health look like? How do you react to tough situations? Like, to me, success is somebody that has built a life by design. They're not perfect. They're still willing to grow and learn. And I think that's a big part of it as well, too. Like, I had Tom actually at the Prime Mastermind recently. He spoke in person. And from when I met him a couple of years ago to then, there's been a huge growth trajectory. And a lot of it is what you said, right? Like, being thoughtful about when he's deploying his time and where he's deploying his resources. I think that's one definite reason why he reached the heights that he did on YouTube and in the media, is just laser focused on where is he spending his time, right?
Yeah, and I also would go as far as to say, like, it's funny because he is such a tech centric guy. Like, you'd look at him as being like, oh, he must be an early adopter of everything. I actually think one of his superpowers is staying focused on his current plan. Yeah, I like, when I watch some of his YouTube videos, and I hope he listens to this, Tom, because you know how much I hate it when you show up on my Apple TV at home in my living room. It's like, I'm like, yeah, just another Tom Story video. Like, it's just, oh, here we go again. It's a 15-minute video that's got a hook and it's got a thing and there's going to be some graphs and all that. And I'm like, that's exactly the point. His ability to focus, which, by the way, I stumbled on a really corny coaching acronym for focus this year that I'm obsessed with. It's follow one course until successful. And I think that's part of his superpowers. Yes, he is techie, but actually he's just staying the course. And I admire that about him.
Yeah. I overcomplicated my life for years. Right. And I did some consulting with some really people that were close to me. Yeah. And I said, give me a hard look, like, look at my content, look at what we're doing from a company perspective. And like we talked last year, we shrunk the team, we got refocused on our content, and we really wanted to grease the groove. I think with the advent of technology, we're going to be able to actually do 10 times more with less. But it's exactly that, like looking at people like Tom for inspiration. And, I know we'll get into your background and all the different people that you get to see. I'd love to hear if you say it's a constant across those people, but the locus of focus, I think, does make a huge difference in people's growth.
I find it seems like every year, and my wife, if you ask her, she could list all of the different people. Like, every year I have a person, sort of the guru or whatever you want to call them. Dan Martell is a guy that I've been following for, like, last year was probably my Dan Martell year. And through Dan, he put a guy named Taki Moore on my radar, who is essentially a coach for coaches. And, it was like, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I'm early in my like love affair with Taki. My wife's already starting to get sick of me talking about him. This dates right back to like my obsession with Gary Vee, probably in like 2012. And, every day was all Gary all the time until I couldn't stand Gary anymore. But he gave me everything I wanted and needed, right? And then you kind of move on to the next guy. And I still have mad respect for Gary, but I don't really follow him anymore. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so Taki, he's got this such a simple thing, and it's just really resonated for me, because like what you just said, like, I can make my life so complex and over engineer stuff. He just talks about like one client who has one problem that you offer one solution for, that you have one lead magnet and one program, and one's follow-up sequence. And I'm like, oh, it's almost like someone's given me the cheat code. I can see the matrix now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 15 clients and 27 solutions and 38 problems. And oh, it's exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
focus for me.
Well, as I talk to my team, because like my brokerage is a little bit complex, right? Like we own a firm, but it's not really a brokerage. So we don't recruit. We're not worried about agent count or office count, but we do every asset class, which is very unique from the standpoint that we do commercial investment, agriculture and luxury, new development and recreation. But what's interesting is when I talk to them, I'm like, listen, all of the asset classes, independent of the specialties, the human beings at the other end of the phone are all typically buyers or sellers or renters, even if it's a commercial tenant or a residential tenant. And the way you're communicating with human beings, you guys are overcomplicating. Yeah. And that's what I've been telling them lately. I'm like, really go to the crux of it. Are they in the market? Are they not in the market? Should they not be in your database? And it's the sorting that, as you get further into growth, whether it be entrepreneurship or real estate, if you can recalibrate and always look to simplify, like what is the heart of what you do and focus on that and ignore the noise, I think you're going to grow a lot faster.
Can I give you the best advice I've ever got that is pretty unactionable?
Absolutely. Yes.
So my mentor, when I first got in the business in 2009, said to me, hey kid, listen, the secret to real estate is really simple. Be the realtor who comes to mind when they need a realtor.
100%.
And he said, the problem is most people don't need a realtor for 7 years at a time.
Yeah.
So your whole challenge for your career is going to be, how do you stay relevant and top of mind with people? And I mean, ick wasn't a coined word back then, but I think it is fair to say in a way that's not ick now, that when people see your name on their call display or in their inbox or a text or a DM, they're excited to engage as opposed to repelled. Right. Yeah. And so like, I think about most of what I do through that overly simple framework is like, most people don't need a realtor. 365 days a year times 7 years at a time. If you follow whatever the stats are, 5 to 10 years people move. Now, that's not to say people don't know people. That's where the referrals obviously kick in. But I would say that has been a pretty universal principle that, and in today's day and age with all of the media and all the tools and all the gadgets, it's harder and harder to be the realtor who comes to mind. But I think that's the fun part of this whole business. It's like, how do you find ways that when people see your name on the call display, they're excited, like genuinely excited to pick up the phone and say, hey, what's good?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I would argue it is actionable if you think about how you're interacting with people, like what is your intent, right? And I think a lot of times people get it confused that they're not dealing with human beings. They're dealing with somebody that's aligned on an expense sheet. And I told one of my builders yesterday at lunch, I was like, you're in my database. So he was asking me about my CRM and how smart lists work. And I was explaining to him, how everything works.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have you in there as a quarterly touch to make sure we do this. Yeah, because I want all your business for sure. But I said, I actually like you as a person. Like we break bread. We talk about family stuff. He's a dad. He loves sports cars. Took him for a ride in my new vehicle yesterday. Like there's more to it than that. I'm like, I'm kind of at the point in my career where I want to work with people, whether they be clients, agent partners, coaches, people in the ecosystems I choose to work with, that I want to break bread with and that are fun, good, honest, ethical people. I said, the CRM is a tool to help me do that because I'm a human and I forget stuff. And I said, there's a difference of agents that will treat you like a line on an expense sheet and call you every quarter to pitch you. And I'm like, how does that feel? He's like, oh, he laughed because he's like, so many agents do that on a regular basis, right? And I think that's part of the process.
And I think part of the reason why they do that is they haven't found a better way, and there's a sense of urgency financially for most realtors when they get in the business. Like I'm an advocate for educational reform in real estate because I know it's very complex and it's provincially regulated, or I'm sure state by state for your audience in the US. But I am a huge advocate for raising the requirements to be able to obtain a real estate license, because I find that if there was simply a pass fail on financial preparedness for real estate, I think that a lot of the reputational challenges we have in our industry, a lot of the client experience challenges we have in our industry, I think would be alleviated if realtors didn't get a real estate license and were already broke before they got their business cards. That's honestly, that's what I've seen. Like I'll ask people, how many months could you go, Justin, without selling a home before you run out of money, start thinking about a part-time job or maybe exiting? And a lot of people will be like, they'll look at their watch and be like, 4 o'clock today, maybe, I don't know, and for us, like, one of the bars that we're striving for within our organization is like, I want you to be able to not earn a living for a year and it not cause you any stress.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not to say that we don't want you to sell a home on week one. Like, yeah, it can happen, but like I think we need to optimize for setting a really solid foundation for you to build your career on. And as far as I can tell, every juncture that is in place in the system of getting a realtor from, hey, I want to be a realtor, to fully licensed at a brokerage, it's all gas, no brake,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the provincial regulators, happy to sell another subscription, or the UBC, Souter School of Business, is happy for another agent to take a course. Our boards, and I think we have an amazing board, but their primary revenue source is membership, right?
Yep.
And brokerages are the same. Like I'm complicit in this whole thing too. And it's amazing to me when I'm chatting with someone thinking about starting their career, and I am like kind of the last stop along the way, and I'm the first person to talk to them about a personal budget. Madness.
Yeah. And I mean, the industry, I agree with you 1,000%. I sat on professional standards and brokerage advisory for years because it boggles my mind that there's no apprenticeship that's required. Like, we got our licenses, I remember, and we basically got partnered with the office manager, went in, sat down with him, and we had a listing immediately. And I mean, he did a 1-over on the contract that we were discussing, but it was pretty complex. We were selling a commercial property. That's the business that I got into when I got into real estate. And like, I mean, you can have people that are there to look stuff over, but nobody tells you to get it looked over. Like, I didn't even know how to draft a contract when I got out of the real estate school. Nobody showed me how to do an APS. Nobody showed me how to do listing paperwork. They highlighted like aspects of it, but there was never any formal training. Now, I do know that's changed a little bit with Humber College, and they're getting a little bit more into executing contracts. But I mean, it's such a complex industry, and depending on the asset class that you study, whether it's agriculture, commercial real estate, residential real estate, you really need to be partnered with somebody that has experience. And I would say do a minimum apprenticeship of a year. Probably have to have somebody who have oversight on your first 3 to 5 deals before you should be legally allowed to represent anybody in a transaction. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah.
But I do think that that's going to change over the coming years.
Imagine sitting in the dentist chair because you got a cavity, and the dentist walks in, you're building a little rapport, they're chatting, asking you how your summer was. And you go, have you ever had a filling before? And you say, no, I haven't. And they go, great. I've never given one either. I don't know how you would feel with, as they're about to put the drill in your mouth, like, whoa, hold on a second there, fella. Like, you haven't actually done this before. Like, I don't know that I want to be your test subject.
How about a pilot for his flight? How'd that go? Can you give us a bit of your background of how you ended up in the position that you're in now?
Yeah. So I actually got recruited into real estate from retail. So I started working in retail at, believe it or not, 13 years old. And they put me in, I was working at a flooring store in the warehouse on weekends just to make a little bit extra money. And they realized a couple things about me quite quickly. One is I was just quite lazy. And 2, I was really good at talking to people. So they realized they put me in the wrong spot. They moved me from the warehouse to sales. And in this company that's right across Canada, most provinces anyways, I was apparently the youngest person who ever got a commission license. I was 14 years old, selling flooring on weekends in the summer. And if I'm being totally candid, I fell in love with the thrill of sales and making money. And I worked with that company for 6 years until I was 20 years old. And at that point in time, I had become their top salesperson for 2 consecutive years. And, as a teenager, making close to $100,000 a year selling flooring is pretty cool, right? But I kind of saw the writing on the wall. Like, it was the retail jail. Like, I'm like projecting out 20 more years. Like, is this what I want to be on? And because I was making a good income at the time and, didn't have any dependents, I was single, I didn't have kids. Even though I was trying, I still wasn't spending all my money. I started interest looking in different investment options. And of course, I stumbled across real estate. That seemed to be the most appealing to me. I was kind of in the construction industry. And, it's funny in hindsight, I was listening to the radio and I heard, it's funny in hindsight, I was listening to the radio and I heard, are you interested in building your wealth through real estate? Come to our free seminar. So I went to a Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. Of course, I bought the ticket, and then they sell you the $10,000 coaching when you're there. And that was a little bit out of my means at the time, but I was primed for real estate. And then I got a call from a member of my family. They're getting married, and the person that they were marrying happened to be a realtor. And so in the course of getting to know them and that family, they kind of got wind that I had done well in sales. I was living in Vancouver at the time. They were in Nanaimo, where I was originally from. They had a real estate team. They actually owned the brokerage in the city that I was from. And they said, hey, do you ever think about selling real estate? And it just kind of like the world's just all the stars aligned. And I moved back to Nanaimo and got my license in 2019 at 21 years old. And I've been with the same company ever since.
That's awesome. So you started with Remax in Nanaimo, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah. I started with Remax in Nanaimo on the Charlie Parker team. Charlie and Graham were the team leaders and the owners of the Nanaimo brokerage. And then 2014, they acquired the Victoria office, Remax Camosa.
you're still currently licensed with Remax as an
Yeah.
agent? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
so I'm still licensed. I'm probably the least productive realtor in our entire company because I haven't sold a home in 7 years. I'm a bit of a stats nerd, so I love having access to the tools and keeping up with the PDP credits and stuff keeps me on my game and whatnot. But I have zero intentions. One of our value propositions, like I don't sell real estate. My job is fully invested in helping realtors build a business they love owning. So there's no conflict there, no tension. Not that that's an issue if people do sell and own a brokerage,
Sure.
but so I started doing in about 2012, 2013, I was probably doing like 30-ish sales a year, 24, 25 years old. And so I wasn't like breaking any records, but at the time I was doing business a little differently than my colleagues. And like, you have to remember this office in Nanaimo, city of about 100,000 people, had a 50% market share. Like it was crushing. And so I was working with the best in the business for the most part. And they were schooling me production wise, but I was carrying around this little thing called an iPad, and they'd be like, hey kid, what's that little TV? And I'm like, this thing is an iPad. And they go, well, what do you do with it? And I would say, run my whole business. And that got their attention. And so I started getting requests from the veteran agents, teaching them how to leverage tech in their business to be more efficient. And then what ended up happening was the request for one-on-one training and support exceeded my capacity. So I started doing little group sessions. And an interesting thing happened, and this is honestly like a part of the thesis of my life's work today, is in a day where I would have multiple sets of buyer appointments, a listing presentation, and a training session, I was most excited for the training session. It was the thing that when I went to bed the day before, I was thinking about it. When I woke up in the morning, it was the first thing I thought about. And if at the end of the day, I reflected on my day, what brought me the most energy and joy, it was the training session. And so that was kind of the first clue that maybe I was in the right industry, but maybe not in the right capacity. And then fast forward to when my partners bought the Victoria office in 2014, they said, hey, your training is working well in Nanaimo. Would you consider doing it a couple days a week in Victoria? So I started doing that. And before you know it, we're filling training sessions, teaching realtors how to use, I think I honestly owe my career to Dropbox, DocuSign, and PDF Expert, because I was teaching a 3-part series on how to use all those tools. So you never had to print off a piece of paper ever again.
That's amazing. I mean, that's life, right? I think greasing the groove and finding out what you like to do and not being afraid to make modifications along the way is super key. Going back to the focus on the real estate side of things, when you worked in that office, what were some of the top habits of the top performers that you saw that made real estate agents successful?
Yeah. So to me, there's a great irony in this business that a lot of us enter into real estate because we want to have flexibility in our time. We want to be our own bosses. We don't want to have a schedule. Like we've come from the employment 9-to-5 world or salary world, whatever, T4 world, as I like to call it. And we get into real estate with these, I believe, delusional ideas that we can just kind of plug in and plug out, almost like Uber drivers. Like you can decide when you want to work and when you don't want to work, right? And it was the Nanaimo office was such a cool place to watch these agents in action, because the difference between the good and the great to me was very obvious. It was systems and routines. And I hate to be so cliche, but the agents who were consistent, the leaderboard, they were the ones who had a schedule as if they had a job. And the agents who are more, or as I like to call now, like lifestyle oriented agents, it's not to say that they couldn't have a good business, but I felt like they were more at the mercy of the market, more at the mercy of trends, of their own energy. If there was any issues health-wise, heaven forbid, they were more susceptible to that. Whereas the agents who treated it more like a business, they were the ones that seemed to weather storms better. And when the pendulum would swing back the other way, they would capitalize on those opportunities at a greater clip than the lifestyle agents.
You're 100% accurate. I mean, this is what I study
Crap.
successful agents.
I didn't realize you were testing me.
No, it wasn't a test. I'm thinking back to like, why I do this podcast, and, I like doing what I do. I actually really enjoy the real estate side of things and the science of it. The book that I'm sending you, Breathe, is actually Hicks and Gracie. So like the top jiu-jitsu athlete of all time, like unarguably. Gordon Ryan's probably up there right now too, but he's in a different era, different thing altogether. But the whole reason I make the comparison is, if I want to study somebody who's incredible at jiu-jitsu to become great at jiu-jitsu, I study real estate agents that are great and become a great real estate agent. And the single difference that I keep trying to hammer into my team's head is the ones that are successful have a simple, repeatable routine. Like Hickson was the best, not because he could do flying arm bars and he was amazing at leg locks and like the flavor of the day. It's because he had refined his basics to such a level that the gap between his skill and even the best new guy was so big that when he went in and just did what he did, it was effortless. And I think the real estate agents that I admire, the ones that I try and take lessons from and incorporate, are excellent at the basics. And going back to our earlier conversation of like, what are the simple things that we do, regardless of your asset class or territory? You have to learn the job. Whether it's drafting contracts,
100%.
Learning the market, you need knowledge. Once you have knowledge, you need to market yourself and generate leads. Once you generate leads, you need to know how to talk to human beings. So if you learn, you market, and you prospect on a daily basis consistently for enough time, it would be impossible for you not to succeed. But then I look at people's calendars versus what they told me their ambitions were. And I'm like, well, your actions aren't going to lead to where your ambitions are. So that's okay. Either change your ambitions or change your actions, right? I think it's really hammering home that you do need a repeatable schedule as if you have a job, because at the end of the day, it is a job. It's not one of those things that you can just wait and the business will come to you.
Yeah, I'm a James Clear, Atomic Habits psycho. I love that book so much. I reread it all the time. It's on your top shelf there. And and just the idea of goals are for people who want to win once, systems are for people who always want to win. I'm obsessed with that concept. I love that idea because to me, it's not, I don't want to build $1 million or I want to make $1 million this year in my business. It's like, I want to own $1 million system. That's what I want. And I think that's the sandbox I get to play in now with my current, version of my career is helping experienced agents who have become frankly victims of their own success because they've deployed what I call the blue collar business plan. It's 2 steps: work harder, work longer. And when you start your career, like, that's awesome. You need to do that to be able to break through that first phase. But it's that old adage of like, what got you here won't get you there. Right. So the same things that helped you become, say, level 1 successful end up being exactly the same things that hold you back from level 2. And that is my sweet spot marketplace is like kind of the 5-year or longer agent who's making 6 figures a year, but I call it air quote successful because they win awards and accolades. But if you ask them, are you happy? Are you fulfilled? Are you healthy? Are you wealthy? Even people who make a lot of money aren't necessarily keeping a lot of money. And that's the thing. Like, when I think about the role I get to do in the brokerage, like we have 200 agents in our Victoria office, about 110 in our Nanaimo office. And it's kind of like, now that I've been in the brokerage industry for 10 years, I've seen too much. I honestly think it's just a big con in a way. And what I mean by that is, meet Joe. Joe is a successful agent, makes $800,000 a year, wins all the awards and accolades. And we put Joe on a stage at events, put him on a stool or interview him, or Joe does a talk, and everyone wants to be like Joe. But what people don't know, and I don't know if you ever released the video version of this, but if I just like expand my camera here, like I have a chair in my office right there. That's where I do my in-person coaching. And Joe last week was in my office crying because his wife's leaving him. And he's got high blood pressure and he's got to take a bunch of pills, and his kids are estranged, and he hasn't been able to explore his passions because he's been too busy with his work. Where the cycle closes the loop is new agents come in and they look at Joe and be like, when I grow up,
I want to be like Joe.
And I'm like, no, you don't. Joe's broke. Joe's unhappy. Joe would trade back. And like, I'm embellishing a little bit, but every single one of those examples I gave you about a failing marriage, failing health, no hobbies, whatever, that may not be one specific person, but that is one of those things relates to a lot of people I work with. And so I feel this like really strong calling to call. Are we curse words allowed on this show?
Not particularly, just because of the syndication, but
gotcha.
They happen to get bleeped out.
I call BS on what we have created. And I'll be honest, just to throw shots at my own organization, Remax. Like, I think we are big perpetuators of this, which is top producer ads and sales achievement awards. And, you know, like when I do goal setting with someone and I ask them why they want to, like, what do you want to make in a year? And they tell me the number. And I ask them this really testing question. Are you ready? Why? And then they tell me because they want to win the Hall of Fame Lifetime Achievement Screaming Eagle Red Ruby Triple Platinum People's Choice Award. Like, that is not a reason to trade your life for a plaque, even if it's a nice plaque. So to me, that's a big thing, is like, how do we get people to actually say, what do you want? And I love your platform. I listened to a bunch of your episodes. I love that idea of, you know, teasing out the best practices and tactics of the world's top achievers. But I have two pieces of cautionary advice. One is, not all of them are necessarily as happy as they may seem on the surface. And two, even if they are, it doesn't mean that their value system is your value system.
Yeah.
And I call those copy paste goals. It's easier to look at someone else who's successful and say, I want to do it their way. So then you model your whole business after that. You maybe even achieve it, and you find yourself still feeling hollow on the inside, because they were never your goals in the first place.
For sure.
Anyway, sorry, I'm on one this morning.
No, I appreciate that. That's why I was just kind of sitting in there listening. And I think I'm actually thinking of rewriting the description based on that feedback, because the reason I do this show is I look for patterns, right? And I think like, if I look at that wall of champion, the guy who wrote the book, Hickson, is actually right there, actually right next to the Red Bull photo. And then there's Jesus and George St. Pierre and Francis Chan and Joe Rogan, and there's all kinds of different people from all walks of life and different belief sets, right? Now, a lot of them do not align in terms of what you would think a group of people would look like. But there's one constant with every single person on this wall, is most of them aren't actually looking at the camera. They're typically looking down because they're competing with themselves, and they're looking at the best version of themselves. Many of them were mocked by the world. You'll never be who you say you're going to be. George St. Pierre, one of the most successful mixed martial art fighters of all times. Kobe, Lewis Hamilton, Tim Tebow, they go on and on until they achieved it. And then people look at their success and we're like, I always knew you'd make it, right? The same people that mocked them, said they were crazy, then, you know, said they always believed in them. But I think the reason I do the show is for people to find the best version of themselves. And everything you just said about our industry, I agree with wholeheartedly. Like, we gave out awards a couple months ago, but it wasn't sales achievement awards. It was more directed at like how people showed up in the community, because our founding principles do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Put others before yourself, which is weird in real estate when it's about making money, but like helping others.
Because it's our fiduciary responsibilities that are literally part of our licensing. But I hear you.
Yeah. I had one termination this year. An agent literally told me to my face about 8 months ago that he would only work on certain files if he made X amount of dollars on it. And I was like, these are some of the biggest developers in the city. And like, there's a lost leader to work on some small leasing stuff, to work on the big stuff. And that's when I knew we were in massive misalignment. But I digress now. Where I was going with that was like, my stack that I live by is faith, family, fitness, fun, finances, right? I want to be at a 10 out of 10 in all of them, but I'm human, and I'm sometimes going to be at a 5 or a 6 in family and faith and all those different things. But holistically, as a human being, I've met a lot of really rich people who are poor, and I've met a lot of poor people who are very wealthy. The simple difference is the wealthy people that I know, it's not necessarily monetarily related. It's they have the love, loyalty, and respect of the people around them, and they have a better emotional reaction to tough situations than the richest people on the planet, who live through fear and have estranged their families and so on and so forth, right? So I think everything you're saying is bang on. And I think people really need to look deeper into success rather than just the sales achievement awards that are so prevalent in our industry.
And I want to be clear, because I can feel the emails being written to me right now in real time, even though we haven't released this episode yet, because it'll be from my team being like, what, we do a top producer ad and I'm so proud. Like, listen, I think it's cool to be proud of yourself. I want you to be your biggest fan. right? There's nothing wrong with it. But if that is our singular data point, that is the differentiator. Like, we are literally recording this as we head into one of my least favorite times of the year, which is MLS awards season. Because I'm literally going to go dark on social for a week, because everyone and their dog is going to be thanking their community, their deity, their friend, their mentor, their brokerage for this amazing award they just got. And that's cool. But there's also going to be 70% of realtors who are like upset that they didn't get it, which is also head scratching to me. It's like, what do you want?
Yeah.
And let's build that. Right. And that's a thing when you talk about those, is it all 5 F's?
Yeah. Faith, family, fitness, fun, finances.
Love that. Love alliteration. So to me, that's like essentially a wheel of life tool that we would use in life coaching, right? It's like, usually the wheel of life is 8 pizza slices, you have 5, and it's like on a scale of 1 to 10, how fulfilled the different areas. And that's something that I do on an annual basis. It's usually one of the first tools I use when I start working with a new client, because it's often surprising to people when they realize, like, I know I feel unwell or unhappy, but I can't put my finger on it. And then we shine a light on some of these other areas that have nothing to do with their business. And they go, oh, that's why I'm miserable. Okay, I get it now, right?
Or the interconnectedness, right? I'm sorry to cut you off, but like I was doing the same thing. We do goal setting at the end of the year.
For an hour straight.
Well, no, that's relevant because you were talking about the wheel of life, and I have that. Like, I did Tom Ferry for a little bit, and I took that concept and I integrated it into our Prime Planner, and I did a one-on-one with somebody whose relationship had just ended. And we went through in the relationship wheel. It's one slice of the pizza.
Yeah.
And I said to him, he's like 0. I'm like, no, I'm not talking about your relationship with your girl. Like, it's going to be your relationship with yourself, maybe your girl, maybe your family. Like, how fulfilled are you with your relationship with yourself?
Yeah.
And then we started looking at the other parts, which could be health, travel related, income related. I'm like, well, what of the other slices can you work on that will make that personal relationship be a 10? Because I guarantee you, if you can get to a 10 and love yourself, you will find the person who's meant to love you. But like,
you'll attract yourself.
You have to, absolutely. You need to work on the whole wheel. And he loves traveling. He's got a huge family. I'm like, dude, why don't you ping me? Go to all these cities. I'll hook you up with an agent, build a referral pipeline of business, travel, eat good food, see your family. Like, does that sound like fun? He's like, yes. I'm like, so do that, right? Like, I think that's where we're having somebody like yourself, or at least looking at your plan every year and being intentional. Then you can front load your calendar and you can build your schedule and you can do the things that you say you want to do, right?
One of my best client success stories is someone I coach in my one-on-one practice, and they already were arguably successful before they hired us, but they wanted to grow. They wanted to go the next level, the good to great. And sure, okay, cool. And we're doing that, and we're working together over the course of a few years, and there was income growth and whatnot, but there wasn't necessarily the equivalent fulfillment. And so we started digging into it, and this particular person wanted to not be single anymore, was looking to share their life with somebody. And literally for a year almost, we spent all of our calls talking about the personal side of it. And we were literally using house metaphors. It's like, you're about to put yourself on the market, kind of like a listing. We need to stage you.
The marketing plan.
So like quit smoking, this and that. Like, what are these things you need to do? Maybe we need to get a little bit healthier. Maybe we need to be a little more regulated. Maybe we need to do all these things. And sure enough, this person within a year found someone who's absolutely amazing. They're now married, kids, the whole thing. Wow. And to me, it's like that person's income relatively the same throughout this journey together. And yet their overall life satisfaction is quite a bit higher. Maybe not so much when the kids were young and they weren't sleeping, but after that part.
And it was a long game too, right? Like, I also had another termination this year and had a discussion with an agent, and he ended up going to another brokerage purely on a dollars and cents conversation. And I said, investors think about what is something going to make them. Consumers care about what is something going to cost them, right? And I said, if you don't understand what we offer here in terms of a platform for your human development, and in terms of that aspect, and it's just dollars and cents, we aren't the right place for you. Like, just like a discount agent isn't the right fit for every single seller that wants value in certain situations, right? And I think it's okay to go through that process. And not every brokerage is built, and for every agent, not every agent is built for every brokerage, right? And I think the process that you're describing is something that I hope people that are listening to this get introspective about and think holistically about themselves beyond just the income, and say, what can I do to make myself happy, by which you will become wealthy from an income perspective. Like, you will not if you go to work happy every day, people are going to want to work with you. You'll sell more real estate. You'll probably be better at your job and end up making more money ultimately, right?
Dude, I at the risk of sounding very arrogant, I feel like I've one life already.
Mhm.
I have a wife who loves me. I love her. We're both happy and healthy. The end. Like Remax could go out of, the new business models could go, like, I'll find something else to do with my time. The mission is the
100%.
same. I want to help people build a business they love owning, not one that owns them. And how I get to do that is not who I am as a person. It's a part of me. And I think we get really territorial and defensive about like what company's better than what. It's like, no, like, man, like, it just honestly, it doesn't matter. And I've been, fidget spinning the little coin for like 5 minutes. I want to say I don't know if you can see this, but this is my Memento Mori coin. So I know you're a well-read guy. I don't know if Stoicism's caught your radar or not, but Ryan Holiday, I was gifted a book, Daily Stoic, in 2018 as I was going to Hawaii. And I was just in the process of becoming co-owner of this company. And little did I know that COVID was just around the corner. And Stoic philosophy has been a thing that's been really, really helpful. It's almost like life OS for me. And there's flaws and limitations, just like there is with any wisdom, or maybe it's just it doesn't care for you. But for me, what I valued most from Stoic philosophy, and it sounds morbid to people when they don't do this, but I contemplate death all the time. I think about, if I was to die today, what would we be? If I knew at 4 p.m. today was my last breath, and I was reflecting on my choices, not just today, but this week, this month, this life, how would I feel about that? And that to me is a really powerful, motivating factor, because I don't intend on dying at 4 today. Wouldn't it be weird if I did, though? That would make for great content. But I think about that a lot. And when I have a bad day at work, I try to put it in its proper context. Like, if I go home and my wife gets home from her job today safe and doesn't get in a car accident, who cares if Joe went to Royal LePage or not? Like, it ultimately doesn't matter. Like, stop treating minors like the majors.
Yeah, I think doors will be open and closed for you. It's whether you choose to walk through them or walk away from them. And I said this to every agent at my meetings, like, to the point where I had to change my language a little bit, because like some of them may not know my heart.
Yeah.
But I told them, we didn't build this brokerage so that like I'm reliant on you. I said, every one of you could quit tomorrow and I'll be just fine, because I'm not defined by being this person that owns this broker and having this team. Our actual compensation model is reversed. If they all left tomorrow, I actually make more money, because I actually share a ton of my business with them too. And I could hire some more showing assistants and automate the process and keep a lot more of it. But I want to live an abundant life and live with people that are creating abundance in their own lives, and doing real estate's a part of that, right? Like it's the thing I probably know the most about and I'm passionate about, but I also love photography and media. So like, who knows what's ahead in the real estate industry and with technology and everything else. Like, a lot of things we're working on at the company that are going to be very different than what Prime was when we started it years and years and years ago. But it's what you said, right? I think a lot of people find their own validation and identity in their success. Are you a successful real estate agent? And when I was on Sirhan's stage, his photos here. So there it is. I moved it down there. I was on stage at Sell It, surrounded by billionaires, top agents, all these people too. Like they had clients at the event at nighttime. And I remember saying one thing that came to me when I was speaking. And I said, all of these people that are here, none of them are going to sell enough real estate, drive a nice enough car, do enough business that the whole world's going to turn around and say, finally you made it, and let you into the group. That acceptance will never come. It's what we all strive for. And we think by doing the things, we get accepted into the group. Yeah. What I've seen with levels of people, like the way I got access to Ryan was I got introduced to him through a friend of mine. Showed up. I think they gave me a 45-minute meeting, and I was there for 50 minutes, asked him 3 specific questions, and I left for a year. And then I came back. I'm like, did those 3 things, 3 more questions. He answered them. I left, came back. It probably took like 4 or 5 years before he remembered who I was. But what I found was people like yourself, other operators that I know, just get excited about solving complex problems. And then all of a sudden are willing to help for free. Like that acceptance comes from the work. It doesn't come from the latent indicator of success, the sold sign, the award, or anything. It just comes from the acknowledgement of somebody who's there with the right purpose and the right intent, going all the way back to the beginning of our episode, where you talked about people that talked about having a simple, repeatable schedule and treating it like a job and honoring the work. And I think that's what's been missing in our industry for a long time. Is I think we're addicted to chasing the vanity metrics, the followers, the subscribers, the real views. And we ignore the fact that it's a pretty cool job and the work in itself is worth honoring, right?
Well, and a little background, my wife's a registered social worker. She's just about to complete her master's in counseling psychology. And so like that's honestly, it's like a prerequisite for being in a relationship with me is you need to have social work and therapy skills. Otherwise it just won't work.
Worked out.
Yeah. But, we talked about that and, she said, this industry is a great industry for dysregulated people.
It's so true.
Think about it, right? Yeah. Like the comparison traps are everywhere, like Instagram, TikTok, billboards, whatever. The thrill of doing a deal where you get more money than some people get in a 3-month period or even a year. And you're just so psyched. And the next day you're literally fearful that you'll never get another deal again. You're dealing with stressed out, keyed up people nonstop. Your clients are stressed, the other transaction's stressed, the other agent's stressed. You're like, it's a very stressful job. And then it's expensive. Like it costs you money just to breathe the air to be all of these factors, it tends to attract a certain type of personality. And those personalities, frankly, those entrepreneurial personalities, and Dan talks about it in the beginning of his book, Buy Back Your Time. They are very prone to addiction, to mental health issues, to self-harm. Like it's the personalities in this business. Like it is something that we have to be aware of, One thing I want to just quickly talk about. So last year I had the biggest mental health crisis I've ever had in my life. So I'm 36 years old. I'll be 37 in a couple months. And last February, I was forced to take what I thought was going to be a week off, ended up being 6 weeks. And honestly, the ripple effects of that period of time are still being felt to this day. And I realized something about myself that I suspect is similar for a lot of agents. And it was the pulling apart the difference between what I consider to be self-confidence and self-worth. I've walked around this world up to this point feeling like a very confident person in most things that I do. But it wasn't until I was brought to my knees in February through panic attacks and depression and anxiety, kind of that blindsided me, frankly, that I had to come to terms with the realization that although I may feel very confident in my ability to do things, I actually didn't have any self-worth. I didn't think I was worthy of the love or worthy of the praise or worthy of it. And so, and still to this day, I have a hard time taking compliments. I will work my butt off for people and go above and beyond. And then they'll give me praise and I'll like kind of flinch because I'm so uncomfortable. And that's something that I'm working on right now. And I think a lot of people in our industry are trying to fill self-worth problems with self-confidence activities.
Sure.
And that's something that, as talking to people about it, they may not agree right up front. And then they'll come back to me and say, hey, I've been thinking about what you're saying. And actually, yeah, I do feel these sorts of things about myself. And yeah, I am a great realtor, but I am struggling with that. So not to make this my mental health mission, but I am trying to get our colleagues to consider taking a little bit better care of themselves. It's not just physical, but it's also mental. Because I think the whole industry would be better served if we all took a little bit better care of ourselves between our ears.
Yeah, going back to the stack, everything you said, I mean, the reason why I had stack is I did life in reverse order. We work jobs we hate to make money to impress people who don't care. And then we resent the work because it prevents us from doing the things that we actually love, right? Yeah. Like that's reality for the majority of the world. And as I study successful people, that guy's the most successful, well, by far. And the reason why I say that is when I have faith at the top of the list, it's really that opened it up for me where, when you speak about stoicism and, being able to focus on death to give you perspective, I think that's very valuable because life is incredibly short. Kobe, you can't see him in this, but look at what happened with Kobe and his daughter. The reason he's on that wall is a constant reminder for myself in terms of how I'm living my life for my daughter, right? But going back to, when I pointed out Jesus, the reason I think that's really important for me is when I thought of my stack, and I reordered it a couple times, if my heart wasn't right with God, I wasn't in a good place to serve my family. If my family didn't feel supported, work out, but like there was a tension that existed, the new was overbearing me trying to focus on my physical health. If my physical and my mental health wasn't in a good place, I'm not going to go fishing or golfing or do the things I like to do, because I'm leaving those people in the wilderness feeling not tended to. And if I don't take care of that stack and the fun side of things, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to be a miserable person to work with. I'm going to be swearing and blaming other agents. And my stress level is going to get to here, and I'm 42 and I'm probably going to have a heart attack, end up in the hospital. And, life is not going to be what I want it to be. And I think that hole in people's hearts exists. It transcends just the real estate industry. I've seen it in hospitality. I've seen it in sales, automotive. I've seen it in venture capital. I've seen it with developers, agents. Until you really release that focus on creating, like, you think you're going to be this perfect person and you're going to be able to, there's a difference between striving for excellence and thinking that you're going to be perfect. And it's proven there's only one perfect person that ever walked the face of this earth, and he was put on a cross because of it. So if the world's going to do that to him, what do you think they're going to do to you? Right. And I think it's just, you can't fill that hole with all of the locusts of success that people look for, whether it be money, women, alcohol. We can go down a wormhole here too. All of those things. Another thing I heard recently on a podcast that struck, and I gave it to a friend of mine that was struggling with alcohol. And the guy said, it was an alcoholic that had come through recovery, and I've come through addiction recovery. I've been sober for over a decade.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah. He said something that was so key. You know what he said? He said, it wasn't until I realized that alcohol wasn't the solution, it was the problem, that everything changed. So he would have a problem and he would reach to alcohol for the solution. And then he'd realize that it was just adding to the problem. So he gave up the alcohol and then started looking at the problem in the face, not being defined by it, but just saying, what do I need to change so that this doesn't happen in my life? Maybe it's not being in certain environments, not starting the process that ends up in that place, right? And we are far more similar than we are different on this world. So I appreciate you sharing your story for sure.
Yeah, man. And as I think we've landed, we're taxiing now to the gate. Two things I want to say. First, I want to just commend you on the self-work and the time you took to really reflect on your stack, your value stack, because to me, that shows me a level of thoughtfulness and insight, not only to create it, but to actually self-audit it. I think that's a really cool thing. And one of the things I've learned about values is that they do shift potentially over time. Like maybe faith will always be number one on your list, and that's awesome, but maybe things will change. So it's kind of this, it's like the idea of like balance being a noun versus a verb, balancing. Because, balance isn't a thing that you get. You don't need to own balance. Balancing is a rigorous act. You're constantly the example is like stand up on one foot and tell me how still you feel. It's like you're going to be kind of moving around, right? And so the fact you've put your values on a page, and the fact that you've actually analyzed the tension and everything, I think that's like commendable. 10 out of 10 way to go on that. The second thing I want to say, however, is anyone who hears your 5 F's and hear how it rolls off your tongue and hears how it lights you up when you say it, I would caution anyone listening to this or watching this to just copy and paste your values to make them their values. Because that to me is the issue. I would love for them to copy your process, but not necessarily the outcome that you arrived at. Right? Because it's so easy to be like, wow, yeah, faith, that sounds cool to say out loud, and fitness and finances and family, and I'm missing one, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's like, hey,
faith, family, fitness, fund, finances. And I agree with you. I think what they should do is they should study successful people and try. And what you said earlier, like the success trap is a lie, where I fail at those things every single day. Right. And I try and tell people like, I don't want to come off as arrogant or I have it figured out, because I far from it, probably more broken than anybody listening or watching this. But it's that constant auditing.
Compare notes. I might have you beat. I don't know.
Maybe, but fitness actually used to be under faith, because I'd be like, well, I got to be in great shape to take care of my family. But I actually realized personally for me, I'm like, actually, no. And right now I know I'm in a place where I'm working so hard that family stack needs to move up, and I gotta pour a little bit in. And the last thing I'll share was my pastor told me when I got married, if you have 5 glasses and 1 liter of water, you can only divide that water in so many ways. And sometimes your work cup needs to be filled because you need to have financial obligations. Other times you're going to be able to put more in the fun cup, and so on and so forth. So that's where it started. And I would encourage everybody else to not be afraid to look in the mirror and see what you have to work on. So definitely appreciate your time. I feel like this won't be the first episode we do We're going to connect either in person or on a future episode. Where can people find you so that they can continue the relationship?
Yeah, I think probably the easiest for our shared audience is on Instagram or Facebook. It's Braden Wheatcroft. Google Braden Wheatcroft. You'll find me on my website, www.bradenwheatcroft.com. And we're just in the process of launching a 6-week group coaching program that I'm very excited about. The mission I'm on this year is to help 100 realtors get 10 hours a week back so they can do with it as they please. So yeah, excited about
I love how tactical that is, like very targeted. And I am now following online. Just found you. I'm glad we made the connection there.
Yeah, brother.
Like some photos, send you a DM. Here's a little hack for agents. If you want to connect with people online, a really good way to do that is go find their profile, like their posts, obviously engage, send them an actual DM message. So if he replies to that message, now Instagram knows we actually know each other, like other. I'll see more of his posts, and now I can support him. And that's how you create community. So
that's called a digital door knock.
It is. Yeah. I actually don't text a lot of people. I always try and go to Instagram, DM them instead, especially people I want to know, which I'm going to do. So if you're listening to the podcast and you enjoyed the episode, share this with one person that you think will find value from it. Jump in the comments. Let us know who you are and where you're from. And if you have any guests that you think I should bring on, I would love to hear the suggestions. Thank you, Braden. And I'll catch you on the next one.